Guess what, humans? It has been more than 35 years since the release of Super Mario Bros. For the Famicom, and on this anniversary, I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at the Mario games in a different way. Hopefully, give you guys a different perspective on how to view them. Now, we all know that the Mario games are brilliantly fun games to play, but what if I told you that they were very sneaky examples of games as art? Games that aren't fun just because they're well designed and mechanically sound. But at their core, the Mario series are a set of games that aim to explore what we find to be fun in the first place. Now, for this video, I want to primarily just talk about the first game, Super Mario Bros. For the NES/Famicom, right? That'll make things easier because it's a very simple game, but it is, also just the anniversary of that specific game, so pretty good reason to focus on that one specifically. But anyway, let's all put on a beret, grab a paintbrush, and speak in a French accent because Mario is an artiste.
Let's go.
God damn it, Mario, I said a French accent. Talk about limited range as an actor, Jesus. So just real quick, I want to get this definitional stuff out of the way first. Ivan Pavlov is the name of a scientist that was doing experiments on dogs and their digestion. He discovered that in the process of feeding them meat, the dogs were beginning to salivate when they were in the presence of the technician that fed them, rather than when they were just given the food. So, to figure out what was going on there, he devised an experiment to figure out, the fidgy-widginess of, why the dogs were salivating before the food. And now we have Pavlovian or classical conditioning and Pavlov's dogs. Alright, so Mario. Say you're just playing some regular old level, World 1-1, why not? Let's go, right? You jump a few pits, stomp on some Koopas, and nice! You did it, you've beaten the level. But the level doesn't end. To actually complete the level, you have one final challenge. Grabbing that flagpole, baby! Well, that's a shame. Well, since I failed that minigame, I guess I'll just walk over here and finish the level. We seem to be at an impasse. Alright, okay, so you might be yelling at me, right, to just jump. So which I'll say, why exactly is it that the game forces me, why won't it just let me walk to the end, right? For all intents and purposes, level's done, mate, right? If this was just a game, the fun that would have been derived would have been in all the stuff I did before, right? So why force the jump? We humans like to think that we are the fresh hotness, beings of logic and reason. We ain't. In moments of victory or accomplishment, there's this feeling of energy, right, that builds within us, and it has to find a way to escape. And how it often does this is through the jump, hence the expression, jump for joy. It's one of those things that you can't really help but feel, because, we're not that smart, we're not that good. Anyway, to refer back to Mario, level completion and that feeling of accomplishment is only fed to players after they do one last jump. Every level completion is then a reinforcement that directly ties the completing of a challenge to the press of the jump button. Slowly but surely, every jump becomes a jump for joy. And eventually, jumping, the very core of play within the game, then just becomes fun. And something I find amazing is how consistently this technique is used within the series. In fact, it was originally Super Mario Galaxy that made me realize this was happening. I had completed a level and spawned a star, and I ended up just running underneath it and thought, oh, Nintendo, please, man, I'm too lazy to press the button. Why are you making me do this? And then I thought, hold on a second. Is this intentional? Have they been doing this all along? And lo and behold, looking back to Super Mario Bros. For the NES, there's that pesky block. Just like the placement of the stars, forcing the jump every time. This whole time, we have been Pavlov's dogs, conditioned to think that pressing the jump button will lead to feelings of joy. If we look at what is happening here on a more abstract level, Nintendo are using a tool specific to the medium, so the level end triggers, to trick your brain into feeling a sense of fun or joy for the rest of the game, right? And I don't think that that is very different to what is happening when filmmakers use a close-up to give you a sense of intimacy, or a wide shot in order to make you feel small or lonely. Right? These are just types of shots which are just a part of the language of film. Just like the level end triggers are part of the language of video games. And what Super Mario Bros. Does is it connects the action of jumping with the emotion of fun or, joy. Jumping for joy, right? So understanding this is valuable, not just because it gives evidence that video games have their own language that can express things, which, games as art zealots, such as myself, have been pointing out for years now. But by understanding specific examples like this, we can also find ways to exploit them further for the purposes of emotional manipulation. So the game goes out of its way to associate the act of jumping, right, with the idea of success and winning and the emotions that connect with that, right? But then they go and introduce the Hammer Brothers, which directly counter that concept. When you meet a Hammer Brother without the Fire Flower, and especially when you're small, there's a sense of dread that hits. Like that moment in an exam where you read the questions and realize that your strategy to not study isn't going to pan out. Okay, 90% of this is done through the design of the enemy. They're random, and the arc of their projectile covers the jumping approach. So all of a sudden, you're in this brain space where you have no clue what to do. You end up looking for a timing to go underneath. But for that last 10% of manipulation, the game has gone out of its way, through the conditioning, to tell you that jumping is the solution to your problems. Lacking that, you'll try to run, but probably fail. Oof. Better luck next semester, buddy. There is probably no other enemy that frustrates like the Hammer Brothers in 2D Mario. Through design and conditioning, the game makes you feel dread when you see them. So with this established language, how do you design the bosses? The entities in the game that should most give you that feeling of dread. Well, and would you look at that? They have the same design as the Hammer Brothers. Now, you might bring up the Fire Flower here and say that it upends this concept by making these encounters trivial. But I don't think that they actually contradict anything. True, the Fire Flower transforms a situation of stress into something trivial, but the satisfaction of turning that paradigm on its head is only achieved through successfully maintaining your precision platforming. And to reuse that previous analogy, the Fire Flowers are like your plans and intentions for the semester. If you successfully do all of that stuff and prepare for the exam, you're gonna ace it. No worries. However, if you slack off and play a few too many levels of Mario throughout the semester, well, that exam will most likely fill you with some dread, I bet. And that's pretty cool, right? Like, these emotions are brought out through enemy design and the use of the end level trigger. It's the creators using the language specific to video games to manipulate how we all feel. And I think that should put us on equal footing with the other popular mediums like novels and movies that people seem to want to compare video games to like all the time. But I think that video games are capable of more than just a one-sided conveyance. And this is exemplified in a phenomena that I want to call emergent player expression. So there's this weird thing that happens to me when I play a Mario game. And I only really noticed this when I was playing Super Mario Galaxy. And I'm hoping that I'm not the only one who does this, because it would make the rest of my argument completely fall apart. But anyway, when I complete a level, defeat a boss, or do whatever was required to spawn a star, I wouldn't always immediately go and collect it. Sometimes I would take a few steps back, turn around, and do a backflip. Or if I was feeling super keen, I would run all the way back, suss out hopefully the correct distance and timing, and then attempt to triple jump into the star. Why do I do this? It's not something that is encouraged by the game. I don't get more stars or anything like that, and it even stalls out my progress in terms of getting the end level reward, as well as moving to the next level. If you think of games purely on the technical level, right, like i.e. decisions for the player to make, or challenges that they need to complete, this makes no sense. And yet, this player behavior emerges nonetheless. So without any other external factor, we as players must find it to be fun. And specifically for this example, more fun than just jumping. So if we connect this back to our theory that jumping equals fun, in terms of the language that the game has established, then it is absurd how much this behavior makes sense. If the standard jump is having fun, then backflips, long jumps, and triple jumps are an extension of that expression. They're adverbs to add to fun. We as players who do this are expressing to the game in its own language that yes, we are having lots of fun. We are having tremendous amounts of fun. If you allow me to be even more pretentious than I have been, I think that this is quite profound, and it illustrates the true power of video games over other mediums. The language of video games is not only used by creators to convey experiences and emotions, but through play, certain words can be spoken back by the player. This means that as an artistic medium, video games can actually facilitate a dialogue between the creator and the player within the art itself. Creators can pose questions, ideas, and feelings to which the player, if allowed to, can accept, reject, or even ignore them. Knowing this, the creators can respond to that input, and on it can go. Now, that statement is probably not all that controversial these days, given how many games you can play that toy with the idea of player agency, and how many push the medium forward in terms of conveying narrative through design and their mechanics. But what I think is extraordinary is that this was being done in the medium's infancy. Super Mario Bros. Was doing this 35 years ago. And if the medium has always been capable of expressing things in terms of game-specific language, what other brilliant things have we missed in all of that time? Because we lacked the ability to hear what the games were saying. What have we missed? Because we refused to look at these games in any other way than as vectors for our enjoyment. And as the Mario anniversary continues, I hope you'll join me for part 2, where together we can take a nice jaunt through the rest of the main series and see if the lens that we have crafted here today can be applied to form a clearer image of what the individual games are about, and whether or not we can form a cohesive picture if we put them together. To kill a bit of the hype, right, I like Super Mario Brothers. The rest of the games also don't have, all that much to say. Like, it's nothing really profound or anything, right? So just keep that in mind. Though, people seem to salivate over the fact that games, some of them just say violence is bad. So, do whatever you want.